TrendsJournal, and it's quite frankly, it's very unnerving for people to read if they are not prepared to see that kind of truth. The TrendsJournal, by the way, is the website is TrendsResearch.com. So let's go through these and cover as many issues as you can, all right?
Sure.
Let's begin with our economies in the United States. I see Wall Street at 13,000. They're saying how great this is. First, show us what the real figures on Wall Street should be and probably will be in the next 12 to 24 months, and how that will impact the state of the rest of America's savings, purchases, inflation, and cost of loans.
Wall Street doesn't count. It's a rigged game. Everybody knows it. You just saw with the meltdown last weekend of night, with their computer systems failing, these high-frequency trading, all of what's going on. It's just a rigged game, and it has nothing to do with investing. Investing has become gambling. So the stock market really is no indicator at all. Let's look at the real indicators. We saw on Friday the job numbers came out. I don't know if you covered these in your previous shows, but just briefly, they showed an increase of essentially 163,000 jobs. What they didn't say is that the Labor Department also reported a loss of 195,000 jobs in July. And the jobs that are being created, we have to understand that 30% of them, nearly 30% of the workers in these new jobs, they're receiving poverty-level wages. And that since March, we've lost 750,000 full-time jobs. We're also looking at an employment of, in the labor force, of participation employment of a little over 58% of the people that are eligible to work. So what we're looking at really is no recovery at all. And all of the money that they keep dumping into this economy has only gone to save the too big to fails, enrich them to make them richer, and give them more control. So that there's no recovery at hand. And it's only going to get worse. Again, the jobs that are being created, when you look at them, I love that they call it hospitality sector. Making beds in hotels and being a waiter and waitress. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they don't pay any money. They don't pay living wages.
Okay, fair enough. I would agree with that insight. I believe the real unemployment rate in the United States is about 23%.
You're accurate on that. There's a great site, I guess you're familiar with it, John Williams Shadow Stats, and he really breaks it down. That's the number he comes up with as well.
Okay. Now, secondly, and very important, at least half of all American cities are now in decline in social services or in infrastructural services, not picking up the garbage, not repairing streets, not repairing street lights that are out. Detroit, half of all their street lights are out. They're now going to be turning all the lights out in some areas for periods of time. They can't pay their bills. The ghettoization of the urban areas, the ghettoization of the suburban areas is now in full force. Every home that goes under in a given area then creates a depressed reality of about $20,000 to $50,000 for the houses beside them. They become centers for vandalism and then drug and gang use. What do you see the likely outcome over the next 24 months in the suburban areas and in the urban areas?
More crime. And, my saying, when people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. And we're creating a huge underclass of people. I mean, you look at the data, again, how many people aren't graduating high school in major cities. Look, we don't have the money. We have wars to fight. We have to, you gave the number, $1.3 or $1.5 trillion, and you could add in plus on that as well. So the American... it's not about building America. It's about building imperialism around the world. They don't care. They just don't care. There's a total disconnect. I mean, I mean, what were you doing the other night? How come you weren't up at? Didn't you have $35,000 to have dinner with Obama up in Connecticut the other night? I mean, didn't you have $75,000 to dine with Romney? I mean, come on. I mean, look at it. They cannot rub it in your face any clearer. They don't care. When you talked about listening to your report about terrorism that the United States wages around the world, and you listen to the comments of those people, these are psychopaths. These are people that should be in mental institutions. Instead, they have names for them. They're called Chuck Schumer. They're called Bloomberg. They're called Cuomo's. They're called all of them. They're called politicians. They're sociopaths and psychopaths. I say this over and over again. When are people going to get it in their heads? These are the same people you couldn't stand in high school and college that wanted to be class president and head of the student council. They only care about their own power, their own greed, and their station in life. This entire country is dissolving in front of us. How many, you know what? Let's have some more. How about another couple of crazy outbursts by some guys blowing people away, whether it's in a theater or a temple? You're going to continue to see it. Society is breaking down in front of us.
All right, next issue. Do you see that there will be another major bailout, another quantitative easing for the big corporations, the big banks, and no easing or no quantitative adjustment for the homeowners who are underwater in their mortgages, of which there are 5.4 million, and those who are grossly delinquent, which are another 4 million? Almost 10 million homes, which is about 40 million Americans, are not going to make it unless they're given help. Do you see anyone helping them? And if not, do you see them continuing to help the people who are playing casino capitalism?
Well, of course they're going to continue to help the people playing casino capitalism, because these are the people that are funding the political campaigns from both the Republicans and the Democrats. And for the expert on this, ask the person who knows the best about it, and that's Neil Barofsky, who wrote the book Bailout, who was appointed under Bush and continued under Obama to oversee the TARP program. That when Henry Paulson, who was the Treasury Secretary under Bush, came out and said that they were doing TARP to save the homeowner. And he points out, Borofsky, in detail, how the trillions and trillions of dollars went only to the big too big to fails, and how both Obama and Bush lied and didn't do anything to help the homeowners. It's in his book. It's outlined. The guy that was put in charge of overseeing it, and he left because he was so disgusted. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay.
That's what it is. It's justice.
Okay. Now, here, my next issue. Both candidates, the president and Romney, are promising that there's going to be a turnaround in jobs. They're showing up at these factories. And I have a simple thought on this. If you can make a shirt, which you can right now, for under $1 for the entire shirt in Bangladesh, paying 14 cents an hour, and in China it's about 3 times that. It can go up to 55 cents an hour. In the United States, to buy a shirt made with union labor is about $29 an hour. And that's true across the board in other industries. How in the world can an American worker compete make a living wage when the major corporations are looking at profit as the most important single element in their choices? And hence, where's our workforce going to come from except from exporting it to other countries that exploit their own labor force? I don't see any jobs coming back unless they're at very low paying, and even now, through a special visa plan, they've already brought in over 8.4 million highly qualified, very educated people from India, South Korea, and China to take the positions of people who had seniority and tenure, making $150,000 a year, who are now willing to work these other people from other countries for $45,000 or $50,000 a year with no benefits. How are we going to change anything? I don't see it. Do you have a formula that you can calculate a better picture than I do?
Yes, and that is, when did it work better? It worked better when people were making a living wage at many different levels. when the gap between the rich and the poor in the United States wasn't the widest as it is now of any of the industrialized nations, when people used to have their own shops, when we had craftsmen and tradesmen, and when we used to produce quality. What changed that? Well, people ask me, how could it, just like you did? I say, go back to when it worked well. When did it work well? Well, I can tell you when. When they had a thing called the Clayton Antitrust Act, when they had the Robinson-Patman Acts and the Sherman Antitrust Acts, that when you didn't have Walmarts taking over the entire country, when they put all the entrepreneurs out of business, hundreds of thousands of them. We didn't have Targets everywhere or Macy's everywhere. We didn't have Costco's. We had people that used to be able to run their own shops. And when they dismantled all of these laws, they put everything in favor of the bigs. They've created oligopolies and monopolies. The same thing in agriculture, the same thing in broadcasting. It's across the board. And you look at the people that did it. Wonderful Bill Clinton, he's the one that made the whole broadcasting industry the way it is. Consolidated, clear channel. Nothing so clear about that other than a monopoly. And you can continue to go on. How about Bill Clinton and repealing the Glass-Steagall Act? Do you remember when there used to be neighborhood banks? Do you remember when every bank had a community bank? Every community had a community bank? Oh, yeah. The repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act began under, actually, Jimmy Carter, another wonderful liberal president who started dismantling it. So you put back in place the laws that were put in there to stop this from happening.
Okay. We're going to say goodbye to our regular stations, but you can continue listening to Gerald Celente for another 6 minutes by calling 832-280-0066, 832-280-0066, or go to progressiveradionetwork.com, listen on the Internet. Gerald, let's take a look at where people are at. I'm suggesting if you have a mortgage, and if you do not have a really good savings, I'm suggesting a good savings at about 15%, that with about a third in gold, a third in junk silver, and a third in dollars, that you should try to unload, because I see an inevitable clash with Iran. I see China and the BRIC nations going to a mixed currency in the next 2 to 3 years. I see the dollar no longer being their reserve currency. I see China overtaking the United States in the next 3 years as #1 economic power in the world, where we'll be #1 in military power, but not economic power. We'll owe $6.5 to $7 trillion, and we will have gotten ourselves alienated by our actions. I see the dollar temporarily being strong, especially against the euro, which I see collapsing, and then I see the dollar taking a dive. I see hyperinflation. I see people losing their assets and having dollars that are not worth much. So I'm asking people to get out of debt, sell their assets, live simply, go off the grid, save, and look for places that are hospitable in communities or themselves where they can be closer to nature, because I also see the environment taking a hit on some of the major cities, especially those at sea level. Would you address your concerns in the rest of the program on these issues?
I agree with everything you said. And the only thing I wouldn't, I don't know, if somebody does have a mortgage, what is it going to cost you to pay that mortgage off, and what's it going to cost you to rent? And are you in a place that you really love and it means a lot to you and gives you sanctuary in a very solid way, So there are a lot of variables to consider. But as far as going to war with Iran, I want to make this really clear. If the United States or Israel goes to war with Iran, it's the beginning of World War III. Our lives will be hell after that. If you think we have a Gestapo state now, you haven't seen anything yet, because this is not going to stop. These are the Persians. They're 70 million strong. They've been around a long time, and they're not going anywhere. And they're going to fight down to the last man. And people forget that the Iranians lost 1 million people between 1980 and 1988 when the United States started a war funding Iraq to attack Iran over, remember Donald Rumsfeld, that other war criminal, giving Saddam Hussein those golden spurs to spur him on. So our lives are going, this country won't be worth living in if we go to war with Iran. So I don't know, I just don't know what to do after that. I don't know if I want to be here as much as I want to stay, because we're seeing all the rights being abrogated from us now. It will only get much worse. And as far as gold and silver, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't give financial advice. That's all I buy is gold and silver. And a good friend of mine, to me, has the best strategy yet. Every month, he buys a little of what he could afford. Every month, he just buys a little gold, a little silver, anything that he could afford with his savings. And when you think about it, Gary, think how that averages out over the long term. It's really a win-win-win-win-win-win-win situation. On the other issues, yes, this is a time when less is more. And survivalism really means, you know, how much do you need, how much do you really want, and how much do you want to give up to get that? It's a new time for voluntary simplicity. And having said that, I also believe that we're going to see a new age. I believe there's going to be a new awakening. There's going to be a new kind of religious movement, not in the traditional religions, but really a movement, and I don't want to use the word spirituality either, because that takes on a different connotation as well, but a real awakening. And people are going to start thinking of the truest sense of the meaning of life. It almost happened in the 1990s, and you were very, you know, you've been around and you've seen it happen when the whole New Age movement was really going strong. What killed it was the Internet revolution, when people started to become money hungry again, and it really stalled it. And then from the small little shops where organic was new and health food was new, they became big business like Whole Foods. That's one place I will not. Whole Foods to me is the Walmarts of organic and health food. But you saw it start to happen in the 80s and the 90s, but it was killed because of the greed on Wall Street and people buying into it. I think we're going to go into a very strong period of an awakening of the soul in the coming years.
And final thoughts. What do you see happening as far as the continued erosion of our human rights and the arrest of dissidents, the internment camps? What do you make of this?
It's what's happened to America. You know, when you talk about all the things we were talking about with the too big to fails and the corporate takeovers, whether it's from Walmart, a big pharma, or big agriculture, or big communications, the merger of corporate and state powers is called fascism. And fascism has come to America. And they're going to continue to do everything they can to beat the people down. And so I'm very concerned about it. And it's only going to get much worse unless the people rise to higher levels and start speaking up, stepping out, and stopping it as best they can. But look what's going on right now. We have an election coming up, and all the Obama apologists are making a million excuses for him, saying that, well, you know, he's doing the best he can, and now in these next 4 years he'll be free really to do what he wants to do, and he won't have to run for re-election, so he can get all those things done that he didn't do, that he lied to us about. So what they're doing is they're perpetuating the lie. They have to stop the lie. Here's my solution for this campaign.
The corporate left cannot stop lying.
No, but even the liberals, I mean, they make every damn excuse. What's today? Tuesday. You were just talking about terrorism. Let's celebrate Terror Tuesday. Yeah, that's the day when El Presidente sits down with the other psychopaths and decides who they're going to kill with drones today because they're suspected militants. And they look the other way. And you're talking about Syria. Oh, the Nobel Peace Prize winner that invaded Libya. That's now caused all this disruption in Western Africa and Mali and other countries. So no, they're going to continue to make excuses for him. Here's what I believe. I believe that if 40% or less of the people turn out to vote this election, we could call this an invalid election. 40% or less is my motto. And people are going to say, well, I'm going to protest vote. It's not going to get you anywhere. Let's protest by not voting for the Gambinos or the Bananas, the Democrats or the Republicans. So that's my solution. I'm not going to be a part of a lesser of two evils campaign. And I don't know anybody that I associate with that will have anything to do with a lesser of two evils, whether it's in a partnership, business or otherwise, whether it's friends, family, they don't deal with evils. But yet you're going to vote for one to run your life?
I understand. Gerald, as always, thank you for coming on and giving us your perspective. And people want more information. The Trends Journal is published 4 times a year at the website TrendsResearch.com. Gerald Celente, always good to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all for listening. Next came up is the Whistleblower Hour, and because I went over about 3 minutes on their time, they'll continue in going up towards the end of the show for an additional 3 minutes, so they'll get the full 55 minutes of their program. Thank you all for listening, and by the way, the program coming now is quite simply one of the most important programs on radio. Please listen to it. Have a nice day, everyone.